Hi, I am Nick Shell, a certified Enneagram coach. This series is going to be checking out a book that I just bought with my own money. I found it at the bookstore and I bought it, an actual book. It's Take Care of Your Type, an Enneagram Guide to Self-Care by Christina Wilcox. So, I bought the book. I thought, you know what? I'm a certified Enneagram coach. What if I decide, what can I learn? I mean, you would imagine someone who's been certified and has made lots of videos about this and even has it in the title of my channel, I would know most things by now. Well, no, you never stop learning. Of course, I'm an 8, so of course I'm going to say that. I'm always wanting to improve. So I thought what would be a good idea is to do a 9 video series based on each chapter of this book and just write down in my notes, what did I learn from this chapter about each type? So that's what this series is about. So feel free to join me in the whole collection or to fast forward to find the video that is specifically your number. So what I want to make it very obvious is, do you want to buy this book like I did? You can probably actually buy it a little bit cheaper off of Amazon. I put a link below where you can do that. There's also a link to a free test on Cloverleaf where you can take a test and find out your type. And if you really want to be crazy like me, you can actually get certified through Cloverleaf. There's a link for that as well. So let's have some fun. Let's look at my notes. I mean, look how high tech this is. I have a notebook and I scribble my notes on things that stood out to me while I was reading the chapter on Enneagram 1s, the perfectionist. Here's what I want to say about it. The number 1 is I don't necessarily definitely know any 1s in my life. I have a niece that's 6. I think she's a 1, but that's as good as it gets. So when I read this chapter, I thought of her and I thought, as she gets older, let's see if this is a good example of who she's going to be, because I think she might be a 1, but I just don't have a lot of exposure, so it's really hard for me to understand. In the same way that a lot of people are about 9s, they're like, oh, you're a little bit of everything. That's how I feel about 1s. I'm like, I can't really look at a 1 and just know that they're a 1 like I can other numbers. So here we go. Things I learned about 1s. They crave the ideal. So we call them the perfectionists, but really they're thinking, what's the ideal version of this? How can I accomplish the ideal version of this? They walk in a room, they see, well, here are things that could be improved. Well, ultimately, what would keep this room from now being the ideal? That's what's going through their head when they enter a room. It says, often they desire completion without overcoming failure, which compared to an 8, I don't mind failure. 3s fear failure. I don't mind failure. I want to learn from my mistakes. I want to become better constantly. It says here though that 1s often desire that stage of completion to reach that ideal without actually having to overcome failure. So imagine, how are you going to improve if you can't fail? And similarly, same thing with 3s. But I can see how that would be an obstacle for 1s. Next is, it says, this is interesting. 1s love vintage and nostalgia. It shows them how far they have improved from their past. Now it's interesting, my dad is a 9, but he's got a strong 1 wing. He restores classic cars, so I'm not surprised by this at all. 1s need to celebrate for no reason. That's part of their growth. To think, I can just relax and have a good time for no good reason, just because they need that perhaps more than any other number. They says that working through grief leads to creativity for 1. So in the same way that we understand about 4s, they're very creative people because they're often in that state of sadness, 1s specifically need to work through grief so they can get to that creative mindset. And that's actually healing and helpful for them. Also, of course, I already knew this about 1s, that they have repressed anger, but I really want to camp on them. My note here says, of course, this sounds like something Yoda would say, repressed anger leads to resentment. But the problem is with 1s, they see anger as a bad thing or they see it as wrong. As an 8, I don't see anger as wrong. I just see it as how I deal with things. Ultimately, that's the first screen it goes through. But 1s are also in that anger triad and so therefore, whereas an 8 expresses their anger more openly, 1s are going to more so repress it. And they also often fear owning their emotions, 1s do, whereas again, 8s are the opposite. But they feel that if they express their emotions, that makes them seem imperfect. And lastly, it says, show 1s in the aftermath that you were trustworthy. So that's part of growing closer to a 1 is after everything bad happens that they have to maybe learn from the mistake or whatever, you show up and you show them that they're still there afterwards, and they can see that you're there before and after. So those are some things I learned about 1s, just taking notes. That's what every video like this is going to be in this series. I'm going to try to cut these off around 5 minutes. Remember, you can buy this book off of Amazon probably a little cheaper than I got it if you click the link right there. And I would love for you to leave a comment, especially to tell me what you're learning about your own Enneagram. Comments below right here.